The frightened remuda was seconds from the washed-out edge of North Ridge when Amelia Foster drove her mare straight across its path. And Jesse Calloway realized the woman everyone expected to fail had recognized something on his horses that she was trying desperately not to let him see. 30 horses thundered across the frozen Montana ground as ranch hands shouted from behind. Jesse could have taken over. Instead, the towering cowboy saw where Amelia was looking and followed her lead. She turned the herd before the broken trail, dismounted beside an injured gelding, and pushed aside the hair over its shoulder. Her hand suddenly stopped. Beneath it was an altered brand she knew far too well. Jesse noticed her cover it. He said nothing. That night, Amelia returned to the barn alone with an oil lamp. Stay with her for one more moment, and tell me, would you have trusted Jesse with the truth? The first snow had not fallen yet, but Jesse Calloway could smell it coming. By late afternoon, clouds had swallowed the upper shoulders of the Beartooth Mountains. A cold wind moved across Calloway Horse Ranch, rattling the cottonwoods along the creek and pushing loose straw across the yard. Jesse was repairing a gate hinge when Amos Bell called from the corral. "Rider coming." Jesse straightened. At 6'7", he had learned years ago that standing too quickly made strangers step backward. So he moved slowly, wiped his hands on his work trousers, and looked toward the road. A lone woman was riding in. Ben Harper stopped carrying a feed sack. Amos rested both hands on the corral rail. Nobody had expected another woman. Not after Pine Creek had turned Jesse's private correspondence into entertainment. Months earlier, he had written through a matrimonial agency because Martha had finally told him that eating supper alone for another 20 years was not a life plan. Jesse had exchanged letters with several women. Before promising marriage, however, he had asked each one to ride North Ridge with him. It was not a contest. North Ridge was simply where ranch life stopped pretending to be comfortable. Steep ground, sudden weather, long hours horseback. Jesse wanted any woman considering Calloway Ranch to see the truth before making a decision she might regret. Pine Creek preferred another version. Big Jesse Calloway tests his brides from the saddle. None had stayed. Now the woman on the dark chestnut mare rode through the open gate. She wore a brown traveling coat over a practical riding skirt. Dust marked the hem. Her gloves were worn at the fingers. 2 saddlebags held everything she had brought from Kansas. She stopped before Jesse. "Mr. Calloway." "Jesse is fine. Amelia Foster." He noticed her mare first. Sweat had dried beneath the saddle blanket, but the animal was breathing evenly. Amelia had traveled hard without riding carelessly. "You came alone?" Her eyes rested on him. "I arrived alone." That wasn't quite what I asked. Something shifted in her expression. Not fear, more like recognition that he had noticed something she preferred, left unnoticed. Ben looked between them. Jesse let the question go. "You want coffee? Martha has a pot inside." Amelia leaned down and checked her cinch. "I heard about North Ridge." Ben coughed to hide a laugh. Jesse gave him one look. Ben suddenly found the feed sack fascinating. "You've had a long ride," Jesse said. "There's still daylight." Amelia tightened the strap and met Jesse's eyes. "If you want to know whether I can ride, Mr. Calloway, we may as well settle that before supper." For the first time that afternoon, Amos smiled. 20 minutes later, they were climbing north. Ben and Amos came along to bring down a remuda of nearly 30 horses from autumn pasture. Jesse watched Amelia without making it obvious. She did not ride to impress him. That interested him more than showing off would have. She kept her mare loose beneath her, gave the animal its head on broken ground, and looked farther ahead than most riders did. They had nearly reached the lower ridge when the dead pine came down. The crack split the cold air. 30 horses jumped at once. The led mare wheeled. Then the whole remuda ran. "Damn it," Ben muttered. The horses were heading toward the eastern trail, where September rain had eaten away the outer bank. Jesse turned his gelding. Amelia was already moving, but she did not chase the herd from behind. She cut uphill. "Where's she going?" Ben shouted. Jesse saw it a second later. The gray-led mare was not running blindly. She was searching for open ground. Amelia was going to reach that ground first. "Follow her." Ben stared at him. "Go." Amelia's chestnut climbed hard across the slope. Dirt kicked loose beneath its hind feet. She reached the shoulder ahead of the herd, turned downhill, then widened her path instead of charging directly at them. The lead mare saw her. Amelia lifted one arm. No shouting, no wild waving, just pressure in the right place. The gray mare bent away. One horse followed, then 5. Then the whole remuda rolled across the hillside like water changing course. They missed the washed-out trail by less than 50 yards. Jesse came in behind them and closed the turn Amelia had started. Within minutes, the horses were slowing. Only one gelding had slipped. Amelia was off her mare before Jesse reached her. "Water," she said. Ben handed over his canteen. The gelding favored its left foreleg. Amelia ran her hand carefully down the cannon bone. Jesse crouched beside her. He pulled off his gloves before taking the hoof. Amelia glanced at his bare hands. Most men his size tried to make frightened animals obey them. Jesse did the opposite. He waited until the gelding stopped trembling before touching it. "Nothing broken," Amelia said. "Looks that way." Ben was still staring at the remuda. "I've worked here 4 years. Never seen anybody turn 30 head that clean." Amelia poured a little water over the scraped leg. "Your led mare turned them." Ben frowned. "You turned the led mare." Amelia gave the gelding's shoulder a quiet pat. "That's usually enough." Jesse almost smiled. Then Amelia's hand stopped. Beneath the gelding's winter coat was a brand, or what remained of one. The hide had healed long ago, but another iron had been worked over the original mark. Amelia separated the hair with 2 fingers. For 1 second, her breathing changed. Kansas came back in a single ugly detail: altered brands, cheap horses sold under clean papers, her father standing over ledgers late at night while the Foster name disappeared one contract at a time. She let the hair fall back. Too quickly. Jesse saw it. Their eyes met. He could have asked. Instead, he put his glove back on. "We should get these horses home before the weather turns." Amelia studied him for another moment, then nodded. Snow began falling after midnight. Not enough to cover the yard. Just a thin white dust along the fence rails. Calloway Ranch went dark one window at a time. Long after the bunkhouse quieted, Amelia dressed again. She carried a small oil lamp into the stable and closed the door behind her. The horses shifted softly in their stalls. One by one, she checked the recently purchased remounts. Teeth, hooves, brands. The 3rd horse showed nothing. Neither did the 4th. At the 5th, she almost convinced herself she had been wrong. Then she reached the 6th. Amelia raised the lamp. She pushed aside the dark hair near its shoulder. There it was, an old mark buried beneath a newer one. The same alteration, the same kind that had destroyed her father's business 3 years earlier. Amelia stood perfectly still. Outside, snow whispered against the stable roof. She had ridden more than 1,000 miles looking for the trail her father had been unable to finish. Now part of that trail was standing inside Jesse Calloway's barn. Amelia lowered the lamp. The gelding shifted his weight and breathed warm air against her sleeve. She ran her fingers once more over the altered brand, then covered it with the winter hair. 6 horses. 2 marks she could see clearly, enough to make sleep impossible. By breakfast, the snow had stopped. Martha Calloway set a black coffee pot beside a skillet of potatoes, while Amos talked about fence posts and frozen troughs. Jesse sat at the end of the table with an open feed account beside his plate. He did not ask Amelia why there had been lamplight in the barn after midnight. Instead, after Amos and Ben left, Jesse folded the account book. "I'm not marrying anybody, because she handled one bad afternoon better than Ben." From the way, Ben called, "I heard that. You were supposed to." Martha hid a smile behind her coffee cup. Jesse looked back at Amelia. "I need help with the remounts before winter. Amos could use another set of experienced hands. Paid work, a few weeks. And afterward? That depends on what you want." Amelia waited. Jesse added, "And what I want." There it was again. No promise disguised as an order. No expectation that because she had answered his letter, the decision had already been made. How much? He named a weekly wage. Amelia knew enough about ranch work to know it was fair. "I'll stay." The next days settled into a rhythm. Cold mornings began before sunrise. Ice formed in the water buckets. Leather tack had to be warmed near the stove before it would bend without cracking. Amelia worked beside Amos, sorting the new horses by soundness and temperament. She kept notes in a narrow ledger she bought at Pine Creek's general store with her own money. Jesse noticed everything she wrote. He never asked to see it. She noticed things about him too. When Ben split a section of corral rail by driving a spike badly, the young man stood waiting for Jesse to explode. Jesse looked at the broken board, then at Ben. "Get another hammer." Ben blinked. Jesse picked up the other end of the rail. They repaired it together. Another afternoon, Amelia caught a rope wrong while moving a nervous bay into a smaller pen. The line burned across her palm before she could release it. She hissed and closed her hand. Jesse was beside her almost immediately. He stopped before touching her. "May I?" Amelia looked at him. His gloves were already off. She opened her hand. "Go ahead." He set a small tin of salve beside her and cleaned the scrape with water from a basin. His fingers were large enough to cover most of her palm, yet he barely touched the skin. "You always ask," she said. "When I remember to. That means no." The corner of his mouth moved. "It means I'm trying." She carried that answer with her longer than she meant to. By the fourth day, Amelia had found 3 more suspicious horses. 5 in all. The brands differed slightly, but the work beneath them had the same careless geometry. 2 had identical shoeing patterns. Another was listed on the purchase receipt as 6 years old, though its teeth said closer to 10. That evening she followed Jesse into the ranch office. A coal stove ticked in the corner. Bills of sale and feed receipts were stacked beneath a brass paperweight. "Where did you buy the October remounts?" Jesse opened a drawer. "Broker out of Billings." He handed her the receipts. Amelia read the names backward through the chain. Auction agent, livestock broker, freight transfer. Then she reached the final line. Slade Livestock and Freight. Her thumb stopped on the paper. Jesse saw it. "You know that name?" Not a question. Amelia folded the receipt once along its old crease. "I know men like him." "That isn't what I said." "No." Jesse waited. The stove gave a soft pop. Finally, he took the receipt back. "All right," Amelia frowned. "That's all?" "For tonight." He returned the paper to the drawer. He was not satisfied. She could see that plainly. But he did not make dissatisfaction into permission. Late that night, hoofbeats sounded on the road beyond the cottonwoods. Amelia was out of bed before she knew she had moved. She stood at the window in Martha's spare room, one hand holding the curtain aside. A rider passed somewhere beyond the dark fence line. Slow at first, then faster. A lantern moved near the barn. Jesse crossed the yard in his coat, checking the latch on the main gate. He looked toward her window. Even at that distance, Amelia knew he could see her silhouette. "You want me to check the road?" he called quietly. "No." A pause. "All right." He turned back toward the barn. Amelia remained at the window until his lantern disappeared. The following morning, a horse came through the gate just after 9. The rider wore a U.S. Deputy Marshal's badge beneath his open coat. Curtis Webb dismounted stiffly, stamped snow from his boots, and removed a folded paper from inside his vest. Jesse. Curtis. Webb looked toward Amelia. Miss Foster? Yes. I have an order requesting your appearance in Pine Creek. Nobody spoke. Webb handed her the paper. The complaint named Warren Slade. It accused Amelia Foster of removing business ledgers and transaction papers from records connected to horse sales in Kansas. Jesse did not read over her shoulder. He watched her face. Amelia had looked him straight in the eye from the first moment she rode through his gate. Now she could not. Webb cleared his throat. There's something else. He took out a second document and laid it on Jesse's desk. This one concerns Calloway Ranch. Jesse picked it up. His eyes moved down the page. Amos had come in behind them. Ben stood frozen in the doorway. Webb spoke more quietly. Several remount horses delivered under a government supply contract were found unfit. The paperwork says they carried the Calloway brand. Jesse looked toward the barn, then at Amelia. Outside, one of the horses struck a hoof against a stall door. Once, then again. Amelia slowly folded Warren Slade's complaint in her hands. The trail she had followed from Kansas had not merely reached Calloway Ranch. It had wrapped itself around Jesse Calloway's name. By noon, Pine Creek knew. That was the trouble with a town small enough for one main street, one livery, and one general store. A government inquiry could travel from the recorder's office to the saloon before the ink dried. Jesse rode into town with Amelia beside him. At the general store, the owner pushed Jesse's feed order back across the counter. Cash until this is settled. Jesse looked at the amount. You've carried me through 2 winters. I know. The man would not meet his eyes. Jesse paid what he could and cut the order in half. Outside the livery, 2 men stopped talking when he passed. Another did not. Maybe Big Jesse's horses are as mean as he is. Jesse stopped. Amelia saw his right hand close. For a second, his shoulders filled the doorway of the saloon. Then he opened his hand. He turned away. Come on. Amelia followed. She had seen men prove themselves with fists before. It usually cost somebody more than pride. That evening, Jesse found her in the ranch office. A lamp burned between them. Tell me the part you didn't tell me. Amelia looked at the receipts spread across the desk. My father's name was Solomon Foster. Jesse waited. He trained horses, bought them for stage lines and freight outfits. 3 years ago, sick horses started turning up under Foster papers. Wrong ages, changed brands. Horses my father had never handled. She opened her saddlebag and removed a worn ledger wrapped in cloth. 2 contracts were canceled. Credit disappeared. By the time he understood what was happening, people had already decided what kind of man he was. Jesse touched nothing. Slade? My father believed so. Believed. He died before he could prove it. The stove ticked behind Jesse. Amelia placed the ledger on the desk. I kept this. I've been following the names west. Jesse opened it. His finger stopped halfway down a page. Calloway. He looked up. The silence changed. Did you answer my letter because of me? Amelia held his gaze. Partly. Or because my name was in this book? She could have softened it. She did not. I needed to know whether Calloway Ranch was working with Slade or being used by him. Jesse lowered his head. Both hands rested flat on the desk. No raised voice, no accusation. That somehow made it harder. So at least half the reason you came here had nothing to do with me. Not when I arrived. His eyes lifted. Amelia almost said more. She did not. The next morning, Jesse placed an envelope beside her coffee. Inside was every dollar of wages he owed her. There's enough for the stage to Helena and some left over. Amelia stared at him. You're sending me away. No. That looks a great deal like it. I'm giving you the choice. Without asking what I choose. Jesse's jaw tightened. If Slade is coming after you and the government is looking at my ranch, staying here could make things worse for you. There. What? You decided for me. Jesse went still. Amelia pushed the envelope back. You make room for a person to choose right up until you get frightened for them. Then you choose for them anyway. She left him standing beside the table. For the rest of the day, they worked apart. Near dusk, Amelia returned to the office for the receipts. Anger made her careful. Careful made her notice dates. She laid Jesse's October bill of sale beside Webb's government notice. Then she checked again. The supposedly Callaway-branded horses had been recorded as sold 3 days before Jesse had legally purchased the herd they were claimed to have come from. That's impossible. Jesse looked up. Amelia pulled another receipt closer. These aren't your horses. Within an hour, the office table disappeared beneath papers. Bills of sale, brand records, freight receipts. Amos brought the ranch brand book from a locked chest. Then the old foreman remembered something. Man came through last spring. Said he worked freight for Slade. Asked the blacksmith in town how Jesse marked his yearlings. Jesse leaned back slowly. 2 months earlier, Slade had offered to buy access across Callaway land to Crow Ridge Pass. Jesse had refused. Then Slade offered again. If Jesse lost the winter remount contract, his spring note would come due before the ranch recovered. The pass would suddenly become very expensive land to keep. Amelia looked at the ledger her father had died trying to understand. Callaway was not written there because Jesse was part of Slade's scheme. Callaway was being prepared to take the blame for it. Jesse stared at her across the table. I'm sorry. For what? For deciding leaving was better for you. Amelia said nothing. Jesse rubbed one thumb along the edge of the desk. Then he did something harder for him than lifting any gate or breaking any horse. He asked, "What do you want to do?" Amelia unfolded a map of Pine Creek and the surrounding country. She placed one finger on the town. We stopped running behind Slade's paperwork. Her finger moved to the county recorder's office. We prove where the horses came from. Amos leaned closer. The old brand register. Amelia nodded. Jesse looked toward the window. Snow clouds were building over Crow Ridge. Amos swore under his breath. Patrick Doyle leaves for Helena tomorrow morning. Takes the old register with him for the territorial records. Jesse stood. How early? First light. A gust struck the house hard enough to rattle the glass. Amelia looked toward the dark mountains. The first real storm of the season was coming. If Crow Ridge Pass closed before they reached Pine Creek, the one record capable of breaking Slade's chain of false papers would be on its way to Helena. Jesse reached for his coat. Amelia reached for hers. This time, neither one asked the other to stay behind. They left Callaway Ranch before dawn. The yard was blue with cold. Frost silvered the fence rails, and every breath from the horses hung in the dark like smoke. Amos tightened the last pack strap while Martha handed Amelia 2 biscuits wrapped in cloth and a small tin cup. Eat before you forget, she said. Jesse carried the bills of sale inside his coat. Solomon Foster's ledger rode in a leather satchel tied behind Amelia's saddle. By the time the first gray light touched the Beartooths, snow had started. Not heavy yet, just enough to erase tracks behind them. At the fork below Crow Ridge, Jesse looked toward the lower road. Amelia looked higher. The creek crossing will ice first. You sure? No, Jesse waited, but I'd take the high trail. He turned his gelding uphill without another word. That mattered more than Amelia expected. Near mid-morning, they stopped beneath a stand of lodgepole pine. Jesse's left hand had stiffened in the cold while fastening the saddlebag buckle. Amelia reached across. Hold still. She retied the strap herself. His eyes dropped to her hands. You don't always ask either. She pulled the knot tight. I'm trying. He smiled once. Then hoofbeats came from ahead. 4 riders appeared around the bend. Warren Slade rode in front. He wore a dark wool coat better suited to town than mountain work, and his gray horse looked recently brushed despite the weather. 3 men followed him. None had drawn a weapon. They did not need to. Slade smiled. Jesse. Jesse stopped several yards away. Warren. Slade's eyes moved to Amelia. Miss Foster, you've made this unnecessarily difficult. Amelia kept one hand on the reins. We're going to Pine Creek. I know. Snow collected along the brim of Slade's hat. He held up a folded paper. Shh. You're wanted to answer questions about stolen business records. Jesse is helping you interfere with an inquiry. That isn't your road to close, Jesse said. I'm not closing anything. Slade looked past them toward the pass. I'm suggesting the sensible choice. Another rider came up from behind. Curtis Webb. His horse was lathered from the climb. Everybody stay where you are. Slade sighed. Deputy, I'm only trying to keep this from becoming foolish. Webb looked at Jesse. You still intend to appear in Pine Creek? Amelia answered. Yes. Slade's jaw tightened. Then he turned toward Jesse. You know what people say about you? Jesse said nothing. Slade dismounted. He stepped closer. You're good at frightening men who don't know you. Still nothing. Slade moved within arm's reach. Maybe that's all you're good at. He shoved Jesse once in the shoulder. Jesse barely moved. His hand closed. Amelia saw it. So did Webb. For a second, the entire pass went quiet except for snow-brushing pine needles. Slade smiled. There he is. Jesse looked at his fist, then opened it. He stepped back. You need me angry more than I need to hit you. Slade's smile disappeared. The first advantage changed hands without a blow. Then one of Slade's men moved behind Amelia's horse. Too quick. He struck the pack horse carrying the document satchel across the rump with his hat. The animal jumped. The lead rope slipped free. Hey! The horse bolted downhill. The satchel bounced against its side. Amelia was moving before anyone else. She swung into the saddle and turned uphill. Jesse shouted, Wrong way! I know! The pack horse ran down the old stock trail. Amelia climbed. She had seen frightened horses do this all her life. They did not run forever in straight lines. They looked for easier footing. They returned to trails they understood. If she chased from behind, she would only drive it faster. She cut across the ridge instead. Jesse understood. He took the lower trail. For several, the mountain disappeared beneath hoofbeats and blowing snow. Then Amelia saw the pack horse below, exactly where she expected. It had slowed near the bend where the high trail met the old stock road. Jesse came in from below. The horse turned. Then Jesse's gelding lost footing. The rear legs slid first. Jesse came down hard with the saddle. One boot caught in the stirrup. Jesse? The gelding tried to rise. Jesse grabbed the rein close to the bit. Easy, easy! He could not pull free without making the horse panic. Amelia looked toward the pack horse. The satchel was still there. Pine Creek lay ahead. For half a second, the choice existed. Then she was off her mare. She looped a rope around the saddle frame and passed the other end around a low pine trunk. Don't pull yet, Jesse said. I know. The gelding breathed hard. Amelia moved her mare forward a few careful steps. The pressure shifted the saddle just enough. Jesse pulled his boot free. He rolled clear. The gelding scrambled upright. Jesse stayed on one knee. Amelia came to him. You hurt? Pride mostly. She offered her hand. He took it. Once standing, he looked toward the pack horse. You could have kept going. Amelia held his gaze. Not if I had to leave you behind. Neither of them moved for a moment. Then Jesse nodded toward the trail. We'd better catch that horse. They reached Pine Creek near dark. Patrick Doyle was still at the recorder's office, packing bound volumes into wooden crates for the Helena trip. When Jesse pushed through the door, Doyle stared at the snow on both of them. You two look terrible. Brand register, Amelia said. Doyle stopped joking. He opened a heavy book with cracked leather corners. Jesse's registered mark appeared halfway down a page. Doyle pointed. See that? At the bottom edge of the Calloway brand was a small, irregular notch. Your iron cracked years ago. Never filed it smooth. Jesse nodded. Amelia unwrapped one rubbing she had made from the suspicious horses. No notch. Doyle went to another cabinet. There's more. He returned with a newer filing. 6 months earlier, Warren Slade had registered a replacement iron for a failed ranch whose brand was similar in size and curve. Amelia placed Solomon's ledger beside it. Jesse laid down his bills of sale. Money, means, dates. The 3 pieces fit. Webb read them in silence. Then he looked at Amelia. I can't promise what Helena will do. She nodded. But this is no longer your word against Slade's. Outside, wagon wheels creaked through fresh snow. For the first time in 3 years, Amelia let herself breathe all the way out. Doyle began closing the books. Then he stopped. Almost forgot. He reached into a drawer and pulled out an envelope. Been here close to 3 weeks. Amelia frowned. The return address was Helena. She opened it. A horse breeder there had heard questions were being raised about the old Foster contracts. He wanted someone to manage a new remount yard. The salary was steady. The position was hers if the Foster name cleared. Amelia read the letter twice. Jesse stood beside her without asking to see it. Finally, she handed it to him. He read the offer, then folded the paper along its original crease. For the first time since she had ridden through his gate, the danger ahead was not something chasing Amelia. It was a road opening in front of her, and it led away from Calloway Ranch. Winter settled hard over Pine Creek. By December, snow stood against the north side of the barn, and the road to town had to be broken open after every storm. The investigation moved slower than weather. Webb collected bills of sale from ranchers across the territory. Doyle compared brand records. Slade lost 2 remount contracts while Helena reviewed the paperwork. Nobody arrested him in some dramatic burst of justice. His power simply began to thin. One account closed, then another. One rancher came forward, then 3 more. By January, the Calloway name had been cleared from the disputed remount shipments. A week later, Amelia received a formal copy of the finding that mattered more. The Foster operation had not originated the sick horses. Her father's name was clean. She read the page alone in the ranch office. Jesse found her there with the paper resting beneath both hands. He did not ask what it said. Amelia turned it toward him. He read the first lines, then stopped. Your father should have lived to see this. Amelia looked down. So should a lot of men who lose years waiting for people to believe them. Jesse folded the paper carefully. He did not say everything was better now. That was one of the reasons she had come to trust him. 3 days later, the Helena offer arrived again, this time with a salary written plainly in the letter. Manager of a new remount yard. Housing included. Authority over purchasing and stable records. Enough money for Amelia Foster to begin again without anybody's help. She carried the letter to Jesse. He was repairing a harness near the stove. She held it out. He read every line. Then he folded it along the crease. When do you have to answer? Saturday. Jesse nodded. If you go, I'll take you to the stage stop. That was all. Amelia stared at him. You don't have anything else to say? He set the letter on the table. Plenty. Then say it. Jesse looked toward the window. Snow tapped softly against the glass. If I ask you to stay while you still think you owe this place something, I won't know whether you stayed for me. Amelia said nothing. And I don't want that question sitting between us for 20 years. He returned to the harness. That evening, Amelia began packing. Martha brought her a wool scarf the color of dark wine. For Helena, she said. Amelia ran her fingers over the stitching. You made this, I had a long winter. Amos repaired the brass lock on her saddlebag. Ben took her mare into Pine Creek to have a loose shoe reset and refused the money when he came back. No point arguing, he said. I learned that from Jesse. Nobody asked her to stay. That made leaving harder. The night before Saturday, Amelia found Jesse in the barn. A young gelding stood tied in the aisle, tossing his head against the pressure of the lead rope. Jesse shortened his grip. The colt pulled harder. Amelia leaned against the stall door. You're holding him too tight. Jesse looked at the horse, then at his own hand. He loosened the rope. The gelding stopped fighting. For a few seconds, the only sound was hay shifting in a nearby stall. Amelia stepped closer. Are you still looking for a wife? Jesse looked down at the rope. No. Something in her face changed before she could hide it. Then he said, I found the woman I want to ask. Amelia waited. Jesse drew a slow breath. When I wrote those letters, I thought I needed a woman who could fit into the life I already had. He glanced around the barn. My house, my ranch, my way of doing things. His mouth tightened slightly. That sounds more like my father than I care to admit. Amelia did not rescue him from the silence. He went on. I was wrong. Jesse met her eyes. If you chose me, I wouldn't want to know how well you could live inside my life. He paused. I'd want to know what we could build that belonged to both of us. Amelia looked at him for a long moment. Then she reached into her coat. Jesse's eyes dropped to the folded sheet she pulled out. Not a stage ticket, a drawing. She spread it over an overturned feed barrel, the old South barn. 8 stalls, a tack room, a narrow office with a desk beside the window. Across the top, written in Amelia's careful hand, Foster and Calloway Horse Exchange. Jesse read it twice. I've been working on it since December, she said. Remounts? Remounts. Saddle horses. Direct buying from smaller ranches. Proper records from the first sale to the last. She tapped the office. No changed dates, no missing brands. No man in the middle deciding whose name gets ruined when something goes wrong. Jesse nodded slowly. Amelia kept her hand on the drawing. If I stay, I don't want to disappear into the Calloway name. I wouldn't ask you to. She watched his face. He leaned over the plan, then pointed behind the drawn barn. You've wasted that whole strip. Amelia frowned. What? There's room for 6 more stalls back here. She stared at him. Jesse looked entirely serious. A laugh escaped her before she could stop it. Then another. He had never heard her laugh like that. Not politely, not carefully. She put one hand over her mouth, but it was too late. Jesse smiled. So? Amelia lowered her hand. So what? Helena. She looked at the drawing, then at him. I think Helena can find another manager. Jesse stood very still. You're sure? Yes. Because of me? Amelia shook her head. Not only because of you. His smile deepened. Good. She folded the drawing again. Then she stepped closer. I choose this. She touched the paper, then his chest. And you. Spring came late in 1889. The wedding took place in Pine Creek's wooden church after the snowmelt turned every road in town to mud. Martha stood with Amelia. Amos wore a coat he complained was too tight. Ben polished his boots badly enough that Webb made fun of him before the service. There were no grand decorations, no expensive flowers. Only pine branches, clean white cloth, and people who had watched 2 stubborn people learn how to stop carrying everything alone. By May, a new sign hung over the South barn, Foster and Calloway Horse Exchange. One warm afternoon, a buyer brought in a young gelding that would not stand quietly. Jesse took the lead. The horse raised its head and pulled back. Amelia watched from the office doorway. You're doing it again. Jesse looked over. What? holding too tight. He loosened his hand. The gelding breathed out and lowered its head. Jesse shook his own. I thought I was the one testing whether you could ride. Amelia adjusted one glove. You did. And then? She stepped onto the porch beneath the sign carrying both their names. Then it was my turn. Jesse laughed. Amelia smiled back. Months earlier, he had believed he needed a woman strong enough to live in the world he had already built. Instead, a woman had ridden through his gate who taught him something harder. Love was not finding someone strong enough to follow you. It was finding someone who made you willing to change direction and ride beside them. And maybe that was the real test Jesse and Amelia had been facing all along. Not North Ridge, not the frightened horses, not Slade, the ledgers, or the long winter roads. Jesse had spent years believing that strength meant carrying every burden himself. Amelia had learned that survival sometimes meant trusting no one with the future she was fighting to reclaim. Both habits had protected them once. Neither could build a life for two. By spring, Jesse had learned to loosen his grip without walking away. Amelia had learned that choosing someone did not require surrendering the name, work, or dreams she had fought so hard to preserve. That was why the sign above the barn mattered. Foster and Calloway, 2 names, 2 histories, 1 future neither of them had to disappear into. Maybe some of the hardest choices in life are not between staying and leaving. Maybe they are between holding tightly to the person pain taught us to become, and trusting someone enough to become something more. If you had been Amelia, with a secure future waiting in Helena, would you have stayed and built a new life with Jesse? Tell me what you would have chosen in the comments. And if stories about ordinary people finding courage, dignity, mystery, and unexpected love in the wide-open American West mean something to you, subscribe and ride with us again. There are still many roads ahead, and many stories waiting beyond the next ridge.